Hey there, skeptics and truth seekers. Buckle up for a religious roller coaster because Ayaan Hirsi Ali, the ex Muslim powerhouse behind the bestsellers Infidel and Heretic, just pulled a spiritual 180. She's now a proud Christian. But hold on, this isn't your typical found God in a cornfield tale. In an essay for Unheard, Hirsi Ali skips the theological niceties like praising and all that stuff and basically dives straight into Islamism and woke ideology. Yep, she's swapping one set of controversies for another. She claims to have more in common with conservative Christians than secular humanists, and she's not shy about critiquing wokeness and atheism's shortcomings. It's Christianity by way of pragmatism and a dash of political maneuvering. Join us as we unravel the layers of unexpected conversion, or is it? Is it a spiritual awakening or just savvy move in the culture wars? Stay tuned because in this particular religious saga, the only thing more unpredictable than Hirsi Ali's journey might be the next chapter. This article is from The Friendly Atheist, published November 12th, 2023. What do you think there, Infidel?
When I first heard this story a few days before I actually read this article, it was actually a theist in a chat room that asked me what I thought about her conversion. And I didn't know who it was initially. I vaguely remember something about it, but it didn't come to mind. And so I glanced over the conversion story going, okay, let's get to the meat of the matter. Let's see what convinced her. And there wasn't really anything there to even attempt to convince anybody. It was rather underwhelming. It was just delving into this whole thing. It felt like she was more comfortable with the embrace of religion than she was, uh, being told what to do rather than making those choices herself. Because she didn't seem to understand or came across in a position to not understand that as atheists, we don't have a creed. There's no leader. There's nobody to give 10% to. And she's talking about how it didn't answer simple questions like the purpose of life. I'm sorry, but being an atheist is never going to answer that question. There are other ways to find it, but that's not it. Now, it seemed like a political conversion. I felt like I was listening to someone at a political rally more than a religious conversion. I mean, she's talking about the Chinese, the Islamists, Putin. Uh, she's done a PragerU video. I mean, I don't know what else to say beyond that. That right there makes a statement of where she's been coming from. This is a political decision. I think she's fearful of Islam, and I think that understanding her background, she has every reason to have a severe distaste and hate for what was done to her. I think she's looking for allies more than a religion. I think she's found someone who hates Islam as much as she does, and that's what she's going with. It's more like beaten child syndrome. I'm not mad at her. Uh, I do hope the best for her working past the self blame that she seems to allow to guide her life. Now, I do hate to think about what kind of pawn she's going to be utilized by these people on the right, but she's already has been being that for a little while now. But she's making the choices she can live with. I don't get to make those for her. And at the end of the day, for me personally, uh, my being an atheist doesn't depend on someone else and what they believe. So it really didn't impact me personally, but I definitely hope that she finds what she's looking for somewhere. And Phoebe, what was your take on this conversion?
So my background when it comes to Ayaan Hirsi Ali is I feel like a bad atheist not really knowing who Ayaan Hirsi Ali is. I feel like a bad atheist here. But I did know who the name was. I didn't know who the person was. I knew they'd taken part in some documentary with Theo van Gogh, the murdered filmmaker from the Netherlands, and she'd received death threats from an Islamist who had committed that murder. And that was about as much as I knew about her. I knew she was Dutch. I knew that she'd converted from Islam. That was it. I just thought that she was just one of the many people that you encounter in the world that does these things, and oh well, you never hear from them again. But reading this tome of hollowness, to quote what Jehovah's Witnesses say, there's no spiritual food here. There's no new light that's come to her. It's devoid of the thing that makes it a religious conversion. It's empty. It's not Christianity with a grenade launcher. It's Christianity with an empty quiver. It's like 15th century conversion in the 21st century by saying, yes, I'm now a Christian, so therefore I'm not going to be persecuted by the people forcing me to go to church. It's hollow. This is one of the emptiest things I think I've ever had the misfortune of reading. I was searching and I was really trying to find what Hirsi Ali actually spiritually guiding light believed. What could I get my hands on? A rehashing of Cold War 1950s bigotry, Russophobia, Sinophobia, homophobia, and progress phobia. That's all I got from it. It was Russophobia and Sinophobia first and foremost when she starts talking about communist China and Russia, which is basically modern day China, which has now got a new bloke, not Mao, and the USSR, which has now got a new bloke called Putin running it. The rise of global Islamism, which is just Islamophobia with a nice name. It doesn't actually say anything about it. It's just this white fear that Islam is coming for you and your white way of life and your Christian way of living. Total bollocks. And then the spread of woke ideology, which is just homophobia and transphobia in a nice, neat two-word package which polled well with the focus group. I mean, there's nothing here that she celebrates. She doesn't celebrate herself. She doesn't celebrate finding spiritual peace. She doesn't celebrate a journey. She's just angry. And there's nothing worse in life than making the decisions that will define you through anger. Don't live a life of anger, live a life of happiness, Cynthia.
You know, I have that as a bumper sticker, Phoebe, if you didn't know. But going back to what you were talking about with her whole exposition, there was nothing rooted in like a newfound love of Christianity. There was no, what was it? Gethsemane or Damascus Road moment.
There was no Damascene conversion. There was none of it. It was all very much. There
was no laying by the pool of beautiful. None of that. You know, it was mostly just basically embracing being part of a cult, being part of the culture wars. And I'm almost looking at this when I was reading some of the things that she was saying, especially when she was like going on about, you know, global Islam and woke ideology and to add to also what any right winger who, you know, talks about the woke in a very disdainful way, it's also anti-Black. But when
it's anti-Semitic.
Yeah, it's basically it's basically anything that is not white cis is a problem.
Christian.
Yeah, white cis Christian. If you're not in that bucket, it's a problem. Okay. And this and one of the things that I'm seeing, especially like from some of these people who may have moved away from secularism, and also saying that they want to embrace like Christianity and also more conservative right-wing values or whatever the fuck that means. sometimes I look at it like a Candace Owen moment, just trying to get a payday. But the crazy thing is that when she first came on the scene, Hirsi Ali was really much so embraced by the secular community. But when I was looking at like some of the, maybe other atheists that have been like in this life for a while, who are familiar with her, a lot of them were saying that most of her ideas for a secular society seemed to be more based out of her trauma from the abuse that she suffered from being in Islam. And one of the things that, as you pointed out, Phoebe, is that when you are just forming your ideas based on your anger and your trauma, it's never going to be a road that is cut and clear. If I'm not as didactic as you, Phoebe, but I'm trying. So
your diction is getting there.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that from the Brit on the actual panel. But one of the things that like I also mentioned in my notes is that what's striking is the lack of deep theological exploration in her essay. Instead, she seems to be embracing, as you all mentioned, Christianity as a pragmatic choice to combat what she perceives as threats to Western values. She mentions the Judeo-Christian tradition as the unifying force and implies that atheism failed to satisfy answers to questions about the meaning of life and purpose, as you mentioned, Infidel. And I think that even those who use the term atheist to describe themselves don't really know what atheist is. If we just look at the word itself, A, without, theist, God.
Or God.
Without, or gods.
It's
Without
only answered one question.
gods, right. That's all it is. Without gods. I live a life without a belief in God or gods. Period. As any person who would deconstruct coming out of often very deep religious indoctrination, you will make a mistake by trying to take that position and turning it into a new religion. And you will fail every time, because that is not what it is. Because as we all know, and we can all sit on this panel and say, there are atheists that sit on all sides of the spectrum when it comes to political ideology, when it comes to what they value, when it comes to what they feel is purposeful or not. The only thing that a lot of us can agree on is we don't believe in a God or gods. That's it. And I think that that's what Hirsi Ali is missing. She was looking, and maybe this could be because she was thrusted into the spotlight fairly quickly after coming out of after coming out of Islam and writing her books and doing her speaking tours and things of that nature, that I don't know if she really got a chance to really deconstruct everything that was going on with her. It's at this particular point, I'm just conjecturing because of course, like I don't know her personally. I'm just going by observation. But I am very concerned with any person that is taking being in one position as far as like as like, hey, I used to be a theist who was Islam, and now I'm an atheist, and now I'm going to Christianity, and I'm going to go on PragerU, and I'm going to do Newsmax, and I'm going to do all these different places in order for people to know who I am, and say, hey, I'm like you. So hire me more often so I can talk about, how like atheism ain't shit. I got a problem with that because you're not basing what you have come to in an authentic way. Kind of like we said the other day, is synthetic. And I got a problem with that. But I'm curious to just like ask you guys. One of the things that was in the article is that Hirsi Ali for becoming the part of the red pill right wing outrage machine. How do you see the intersection of religion and politics in this context? And do you think it's possible to separate the two in a public discourse? What say you, Phoebe?
What do I say about that?
Mm-hmm.
It's irrelevant because they are intrinsically the same.
Mm-hmm.
This red pill nonsense, this public discourse nonsense, they all boil down to one thing: a larger bank balance for me, myself, and I. That's all it is. There's nothing else out there as far as I'm concerned. It's just a larger bank balance for me, myself, and I. And there's nothing more that can be said. There's nothing less that can be said because, well, frankly, these red pill communities are just grifter communities. They're just communities that are out there to create outrage pornography for the masses who are just fueled by this irrational nonsense that the change is coming and the world is spinning too fast, Jonathan.
Yeah, there's several points that I think are important that we've all gotten through so far. I read this full article. I also watched her PragerU thing, and I can say that it's really just a rehash of her hatred for Islam due to her horrendous upbringing by the Muslim Brotherhood, and that was truly tragic. So there's a little bit of possibly some serious PTSD going on. Can't say she's not there. I don't know her. So, but we have to have some sort of compassion for the position she was in. But it's been a long time since then. And I agree they have a bad ideology and a bad grasp of all things civilized. And personally, I have no love for religion. They all suck. Caveat, not in a good way. Her PragerU video attempt to claim woke ideology, however she defines that, is the same as the extremist Islam is laughable. It is rather sophomoric and overly simplified. This is kind of something she does a lot, from what I understand from her other works, is that she tends to overgeneralize. And she is definitely afraid of the war, quote unquote, on Western civilization, and that in order to find enough allies, as you said, for this war, she had to go to the other people who hate what she hates as much, if not more, than she does, and that's the Christians. So, and the extreme Christians at that point. The American Enterprise Institute and the Hoover Institution are two extreme right-wing Trumpist or type organizations. So it's, these are the people she's hanging out with. That's why she decided that woke ideology was the same as or similar to Islamism. And of course, that's laughable. And they're not even related to one another. But I'm sad in a way because I think that she's being intellectually dishonest in the way she's presenting it. And again, this is all just a move to keep her on the book circuit and the speaking tours. And they will use her. And if she hasn't looked around and saw how many Black people there are around her, she might get the idea that these people don't like her. Infidel, what do you think?
I expected when I saw the article, I expected something that was going to be greater than the road to Damascus that Cynthia had mentioned earlier. I mean, I mean, by now, 2,000 years of practice, God should be able to amp that shit up a little bit, give us something really spectacular. But there was, as we said, there's nothing of the sort. It's a completely, as you said, Jonathan, it's a pragmatic choice to say, I hate these people. These people hate these people. They might not even like me, but they'll pimp me out on news programs and things like PragerU, and I'll get a platform and I'll get people listening and worked up about something that she's really afraid of. Now, woke, she just adopted their terminology because she's like, yeah, I can hate that too. I mean, what's one more? If that gets you on my side, we make that compromise. That's really all I see that as. I don't think it's so much something she's invested in. Her fear is the big Islamic boogeyman that she's been raised in. And I understand, I know someone who their pastor said like a thief in the night when they were a child. So they were afraid because God was going to come back and they were left behind. But she has experienced Islamic Brotherhood and she knows what they're about. So to her, the idea of that being a new reality where she is today, yeah, I bet it does keep her awake at night. The problem is, I don't think she's chosen the better solution. I think she's chosen something she finds security, comfort, and, as we said, allies. And I hope she realizes that at some point and steps out of it. But at the end of the day, all of us, I don't think we're going to go change and convert. I don't think any of us are going to go to mosque, temple, or church over this. So good luck. I'll pass. I'm still waiting on that road to Damascus plus that God can do. Until then, I'm riding with where I'm at. Cynthia, you want to take us out?
Sure, but I know that I'm not converting because I like sleeping in on Sundays. But
amen.
Hey, now. Well, I think that Ayaan Hirsi Ali's conversion to Christianity appears to be less about a personal spiritual journey and more about finding common ground with a particular political ideology. It's a reminder that even those who have fought against religious extremism can at times find themselves entangled in the complexities of the culture wars. But what do you think, dear viewer and listener? Are you wondering about the complexities of the culture wars? Do you have any thoughts about Miss Ali's conversion? Make sure you put them in the comments below. And if you want more from the nonprofits, click here.